I've been following you for quite some time, and you always have just a word, just an incredible word that seems to hit at the right moment. And what I really appreciate about you as a teacher is the fact that you just give it to people real.
Unless I'm doing something very specific, like a skit, most of the time, whether it's from students or during sessions with my patients, or honestly doing a literature review, I just look at something and I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder if other people have this information in their head, or if it's possible to just like hit record very quickly. I don't think about it as you're in so many realms doing it. Like, I see patients every week. I teach 4 classes. I'm conducting research. I think a lot of us aren't aware of the wealth of knowledge that we have. And when social media is done right, the people that it can reach, because I will always reach way more people on an Instagram video or a LinkedIn video or a TikTok video, surpassing my caseload that I deal with every week or the number of students I see. So
Your take on imposter syndrome.
So I think in therapy sometimes a lot of people get fixated on what I identify as branch work instead of root work. And it's the aspect of I believe imposter syndrome exists. However, I think that a lot of times people are going at it according to branches, and the way that they're working with the patients isn't very helpful. Like, if the branch is imposter syndrome, but you identify symptoms of, I would ask questions about how often do you feel like you do not have the expertise? Have you noticed a difference in the environments? Have you notice a difference in the times of day? How often does it happen? And then if I look at an environmental difference, for example, I had a patient who went from an HBCU to a PWI for med school, and then all of a sudden they didn't feel qualified to do anything. And I was like, that's interesting, because just looking at what you've shared, you seem like quite a powerhouse. What do you see as the difference? And when there's the notable difference in your environment and the demographics of individuals around you, and you feel more tokenized and you feel like you have to portray this model minority, that's feeling like an imposter. That's feeling like your qualifications aren't worthy. But it's not solely due to what's actually internal. It has to deal with the systemic aspects of racism and oppression and that aspect of it, or attachment. Like, if you are in a different environment and you may feel like you don't belong, but it could be because you have significant anxiety and your anxiety is rooted in a recent transition or in trauma. These are all going to be dealing with the same symptoms. They're all that, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like my qualities are appropriate. I'm constantly questioning myself. I'm worried I'm going to get found out. Like, a lot of times when I'm talking about imposter syndrome, the title of my presentation is, I feel like I'm in the wrong room. Like, 'cause that's what it feels like. And you'll have multiple patients, but if you're just looking at the symptoms and not the root of it, it's not going to help. If we're doing the root of imposter syndrome is based off of racism related stress or racial battle fatigue, we're going to do some aspect of historical context regarding where stereotypes come from. The fact that this is not in your head, you have overtly or covertly been told that you're not enough. And how do we deal with that? How do we incorporate some aspect of Black identity development or education? If you're doing it from the realm of anxiety or attachment, we're going to look at, when it was the last time you didn't feel anxious. What do you need in that environment to feel more comfortable? Have you noticed that there are certain things within this environment that they're antithetical to what make you feel more comfortable to be confident in your abilities, right? So the symptoms are similar. The diagnosis may be similar, but your mental health is always going to be a fingerprint. If you are dealing with it as a result of racism related stress and you haven't been mindful of the media you take in or the messaging around you that makes you feel as though you don't belong, not only in your work environment, but in this world, if you're consistently ingesting that, the symptoms aren't going to decrease. You also have to change your environment. If you're not you're dealing with it as a result of anxiety, and you haven't acknowledged that, well, the one thing about this environment that makes me feel more of an imposter is I'm often rushed and I don't feel confident in sharing that. And I know that I have anxiety and I know that I need more time to process things. I also don't like coming into the work environment. Those things would have to change. Some people need to go delve deeper in, take the slower process. So difference between, looking at solution focused therapy and taking what I call the scenic route, which I do a lot of my content too. Is like, I can tell you all about this. We are going to take the scenic route because I want you to fully embed yourself in this education. But I definitely believe it exists. I just think that individuals have a mindset. I think social media has something to do with this, but individuals have a mindset that is one size fits all. This work makes you feel like an imposter, not because of your skills, but because their work ethic does not align with your values.
Right. And sometimes it's both.
Sometimes it's definitely both.
Sometimes it's all of the things, you know. And I think also you mentioned social media, and I think social media, again, is a reflection of how you set your world up around yourself. So if you're putting yourself in situations or following people or scrolling through scenarios that make you feel less than who you know you really are, then there's some responsibility and accountability that a person has to take on to ensure that they are keeping themselves in a space that feels loving and helpful and that's filling you up versus stripping you away from the person that you know that you are. Thank you for listening to the Shaping Freedom with Lisane Basquiat podcast. I'm Lisane Basquiat, and I'm so grateful that you're here. As always, please share, like, comment, and let someone know about this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.